That's when she turned. Slowly, deliberately, her eyes travelled from his carefully shaped fade down the length of his ochre linen suit all the way to his pristine loafers and back up again. She didn't look impressed, she looked amused. Joshua felt something flicker in his chest. Energy, she repeated, her French lilt making the word sound like a challenge. Is that what we're calling it now? Because from over here, your energy looks very loud. Joshua grinned. He couldn't help it. You look like a giant plantain, monsieur. Joshua let out a bark of laughter that echoed off the concrete walls of the turbine hall. Challenge accepted, he whispered, his eyes locked on hers.
Welcome to Heart, Soul and Melanin. I'm here to tell you about people who've earned their love stories, the ones who've spent years being strong and are finally ready to be seen. These are the London love stories, Black British romance for anyone who's reached the midpoint of life. Hit subscribe because every week we bring you a new story. Real bodies, real struggles, real love.
They say London is a village, but for Camille Laurent, it's a fortress. She's the change manager, flawless, colour-coded and strictly no distractions, until she met a man who looked like a ripe plantain and talked like a dream. Enter Joshua Mackay, 6'3" of British-Guadeloupean charm, wrapped in an ochre linen suit that should be a crime, but on him, it's a promise. He doesn't just want her time, he wants to break the rhythm of her perfectly structured life. From the sterile halls of the Tate Modern to the sweat-soaked bass lines of a Zouk night in Hackney, the chase is on. It's a game of collé serré, too close to breathe, but too risky to fall.
The London sun was out, which meant every black person in the city was suddenly dressed for a garden party in St. Kitts. Joshua Mackay was no exception. He stood in the middle of the Tate Modern's turbine hall, looking like a tall glass of tropical punch in an ochre-coloured linen suit that most men wouldn't dare pull off unless they were a background extra in a 90s R&B video. But Joshua had the height, 6'3" in bare feet, the beard, meticulously shaped, and the I know my worth posture to make it look like high fashion. He wasn't really there for the art. He was there because his business partner, Clive Baptiste, had told him he needed to expand his horizons after his divorce. Something about broadening his world beyond board meetings and WhatsApp groups. Expand my horizons, Joshua thought, adjusting his colour. The only thing expanding here is my boredom. He'd spent 20 minutes pretending to be interested in what appeared to be a canvas someone had attacked with a paint roller during a nervous breakdown. He'd nodded thoughtfully, he'd stroked his beard, he'd even tilted his head in that way people do when they want to look deep. Nothing, not a single spark of genuine interest. And then he saw her. Joshua felt the shift before he even processed what he was looking at, that split-second recalibration of attention when something genuinely compelling enters your field of vision. She was standing in front of a massive chaotic painting, and somehow she looked more interesting than anything on the walls. She had cocoa skin that seemed to absorb and reflect the gallery's natural light all at once, and her hair was brushed up into a sleek but soft top knot that was elegant and regal and the epitome of black beauty. The forest green jumpsuit she wore was sleek and professional, the kind of thing that said, I have a corporate card and I know how to use it, but it also hugged her curves in a way that made Joshua forget, briefly, that he was supposed to be a gentleman. More than that, though, was the expression on her face. She was staring at the painting like she wanted to fire it, like the canvas had missed a deadline and she was about to schedule a very uncomfortable performance review. Joshua thought, a slow grin spreading across his face. This is going to be fun. He straightened his shoulders, flashed his magnetic smile at a passing tourist for practice, and made his move. He didn't do shy, never had. You look like you're about to fire the painting, he said, stepping up beside her. His voice came out in that deep, easy South London rumble that usually did half the work for him. Warm, confident, the vocal equivalent of a firm handshake and direct eye contact. She didn't even look at him. "I'm just trying to find the logic," she said, her voice crisp and French accented in a way that made even mild criticism sound elegant. "There's no structure here, it's just noise." Up close, Joshua caught the scent of her perfume, something expensive and understated, with notes of bergamot and something else he couldn't quite place. It suited her, controlled, refined, the kind of woman who colour-coded her calendar and actually stuck to it. "Maybe you're looking too hard," Joshua offered, leaning back slightly, letting the confidence settle into his bones. "Sometimes you just have to vibe with it, feel the energy." That's when she turned. Slowly, deliberately, her eyes travelled from his carefully shaped fade down the length of his ochre linen suit all the way to his pristine loafers and back up again. It was the kind of assessment that should have come with a clipboard and a scoring rubric. She didn't look impressed, she looked amused. Joshua felt something flicker in his chest, not quite nervousness, but close. It had been a long time since a woman had looked at him like that, like she was already 3 steps ahead and mildly entertained by his efforts to keep up. "Energy," she repeated, her French lilt making the word sound like a challenge. "Is that what we're calling it now? Because from over here, your energy looks very loud." Joshua grinned. He couldn't help it. A woman who could throw a punch, who could match his energy and toss it right back at him. That was interesting. "Loud? This suit is a classic, darling. It's ochre. It represents sunshine and prosperity." "It represents a man who wants everyone to look at him," Camille clapped back. A tiny dimple appeared in her cheek, just for a second, but Joshua caught it, and his heart did something stupid and optimistic. "You look like a giant plantain, monsieur." Joshua let out a bark of laughter that echoed off the concrete walls of the turbine hall, drawing the attention of at least 3 clusters of art students and one very stern-looking guide. "A giant plantain, for real?" He pressed his hand to his chest in mock offence. "After I spent 45 minutes steaming this linen." "Waste of steam," she shrugged, turning back to the painting. But Joshua saw it. The way her shoulders relaxed just slightly, the way the corner of her mouth twitched like she was fighting not to smile properly. "We should continue this over a drink," he said. "Camille," she said, still facing the painting, "and I don't drink coffee with men who dress like they're heading to a wedding in Port of Spain when we're in SE1. Camille, the name rolled through Joshua's mind like honey, French, elegant, sharp enough to cut if you weren't careful. "I'm Joshua," he said, stepping deliberately into her line of sight, lowering his voice to something softer, more genuine. "And who said anything about coffee? I was thinking more like a Guinness punch or something with a bit more kick." He watched her eyes for the flicker, that moments of interest winning over irritation, when curiosity cracked through the professional armour. There it was, just a flash, quick as lightning, but he saw it. "And for the record," he added, "the suit stays, but I can be very convincing when I want to be." Camille arched a perfectly threaded eyebrow. The gesture was so precise it could have been choreographed. "Convincing," she tilted her head, and Joshua noticed the elegant line of her neck, the way the gallery light caught the gold hoops in her ears. "Convincing? You've got 5 minutes of my time, and you've already been compared to a starch-based side dish. I don't think your convincing is working as well as you think it is." God, she's magnificent, Joshua thought, all fire and precision and barely concealed amusement. For the first time in 18 months, since the ink dried on his divorce papers and he'd moved his life into a 2-empty flat in Clapham, Joshua felt something shift, something that had nothing to do with closing deals or maintaining appearances or family obligations. This was want, pure and uncomplicated and utterly inconvenient. "Challenge accepted," he whispered, his eyes locked on hers. He could see it then, behind the professional mask, behind the perfectly applied makeup and the corporate armour, a woman who was just as curious about him as he was about her. She was a planner, he'd bet money on it, the type who lived for control, for structure, for knowing exactly what came next. And Joshua, he was exactly the kind of chaos she wasn't prepared for. "I'll see you around, Camille," he said, backing away with a playful two-finger salute. His heart was doing something ridiculous in his chest, but he kept his voice steady, easy, confident. "Don't push. Not yet. Let her wonder. And next time, I'll wear the electric blue, just to really give you a headache." Camille watched him walk away, his ochre jacket glowing in the afternoon light streaming through the turbine hall's massive windows. She should have been annoyed. She was annoyed. Men like him, all charm and confidence and peacock colours, were exactly the kind of distraction she'd spent the last decade avoiding. She had a career, she had plans, she had a restructuring project starting Monday morning that required every single one of her brain cells. She did not have time for banana men in linen suits who smelled of sandalwood and expensive cologne and spoke in that low, easy rumble that did unfortunate things to her pulse. Yet she shook her head, a real smile finally breaking through, the kind she usually reserved for her inner circle or a particularly well-executed spreadsheet. "Too much spice," she muttered to herself, turning back to the painting. But for the first time that afternoon, for the first time in longer than she cared to admit, the art seemed not quite so boring, and somewhere in the back of her meticulously organised mind, a small rebellious voice whispered, "Electric blue. I wonder what that would look like." Camille ignored it.
Monday morning arrived with the kind of greyness that made you question every life choice that had brought you to England. Camille Lawrence sat in the back of an Uber, watching rain streak down the window as the car crawled through Canary Wharf traffic. Her navy Reese blazer was perfectly pressed. Her natural hair was silk-pressed and flawless. Her leather portfolio contained 17 colour-coded tabs in a restructuring proposal that would either save 500 jobs or make her the most hated woman in the building. She was ready. Except for the fact that she could not stop thinking about a man dressed like a tropical fruit. "Focus," Camille told herself. "You have a presentation in 45 minutes. The problem was that Joshua Micaiah had lodged himself in her brain like data that refused to be categorized. She'd spent all Sunday trying to rationalize him away. He was too loud, too confident, too much. Men like that were walking red flags. And yet, that smile, that stupid, charming smile that suggested he knew exactly how good he looked and was politely waiting for the rest of the world to catch up. The way he'd looked at her, not like she was pretty, but like she was fascinating. "Stop it," she commanded herself as the Uber pulled up to the sleek glass tower that housed Jennings & Co. Financial Services. The 23rd floor smelled like expensive coffee and quiet panic. Camille had been a change management consultant for 7 years, which meant she developed a sixth sense for reading rooms. The junior analysts kept their heads down, fingers flying over keyboards. The department heads hovered near their offices, polite but guarded. As a change manager, she existed in a strange borderline space. She was a hired guns brought in when leadership knew something needed fixing but didn't want their fingerprints on it. Sometimes that meant streamlining, sometimes it meant cuts. Either way, Camille was there to be the one who delivered the news and absorbed the resentment. She'd made peace with it. The job required precision, data, and the ability to make difficult recommendations without flinching. If you were good, if you could show your work, justify every decision, and actually improve outcomes, people would eventually work with you. Respect came later. Sometimes. Camille opened her laptop and pulled up the presentation she'd been perfecting for the past 2 weeks. 63 slides, each one a small masterpiece of persuasive data visualization. This was her element. This was where she belonged, in control, organized, speaking the language of efficiency and optimization. The presentation went perfectly. Camille had walked them through 2 weeks of analysis, interviews, process mapping, financial modeling showing exactly where the inefficiencies lived.
redundant approvals, overlapping responsibilities. 3 separate teams doing the same work because nobody had questioned the structure in 8 years. Her recommendations: consolidate 2 departments, redistribute headcount, eliminate 14 positions that added no value. It wasn't about slashing jobs, it was about making the organisation sustainable. The department heads nodded, the CFO smiled, someone called it elegant. And through it all, Camille was utterly, devastatingly professional. Except for the moment during slide 37 when her mind wandered just for a second to the way Joshua's voice had dropped when he'd said, "I can be very convincing," and she completely lost her train of thought mid-sentence about quarterly projections. She recovered smoothly. No one noticed. But she had noticed, and it bothered her. By 6 p.m, Camille was exhausted. She headed towards Liverpool Street Station, already planning her evening. Tube home to Islington, hot shower, Sancerre, Netflix. Perfect, controlled, exactly what she needed. She was halfway there when she stopped. There, in a shop window, was an electric blue suit. Camille stood on the pavement, briefcase in hand, staring at a suit she would never buy for a man she didn't actually know. And next time, I'll wear the electric blue. She shook her head and kept walking. That evening, curled up on her sofa with wine, Camille's phone rang. Aurelie. "Finally," her sister said. "Mum called asking if you're coming Friday, also if you're seeing anyone seriously. I told her you're too busy swiping left." Camille snorted. "Tell Mum I'll be there." "You're deflecting. What are you hiding?" "I'm not." "What's his name?" Camille sighed. "His name is Joshua. I met him at the Tate. We talked for 5 minutes, that's it." 5 minutes and you can't stop thinking about him, Aurelie's voice shifted, cautiously now. "What's he like?" "Tall, confident, wearing an ochre suit like he owned the place. Why?" Silence on the other end, then quietly, "Does he remind you of anyone?" Camille's stomach dropped. She knew exactly who Aurelie meant. "No," Camille said quickly, "it's not like that." "Aurelie?" "It's not. Joshua is nothing like Tariq." But even as she said it, she knew it wasn't entirely true. Tariq had been tall too, confident too, wore his dashikis and designer jeans like he was daring the world to look away. He'd swept into her life during her master's program, all poetry and passion and grand pronouncements about breaking free from corporate chains and living authentically. Camille was 24, driven, organised, on track for a consulting career that her mother approved of and her father would have been proud of. And Tariq had made her feel like she was suffocating. "You're too controlled," he told her, running his fingers through her then longer lace-front weave. "Too afraid to just feel things. Let me show you how to live." So she had. She'd let him convince her to skip networking events for poetry jams, to trade her structured weekends for spontaneous trips to Paris, to Dubai, to anywhere he wanted to go. She'd let herself get swept up in the chaos of loving someone who lived entirely in the moment. And then she'd gotten pregnant. "We'll figure it out," Aurelie said gently, pulling Camille back to the present. "You're not that girl anymore." "I know," Camille whispered. But did she? She remembered the test, the 2 lines, the terror, the abandonment, the loss. And then she thought about Joshua, his laugh, his confidence, the way he'd looked at her. "I can be very convincing." No, she couldn't do this again, couldn't risk it, couldn't let some charming man with too much confidence and not enough substance make her forget who she'd worked so hard to become. She finished her wine, opened her laptop and got back to work. Because Camille was a professional. She had a FTSE 100 company to restructure and absolutely no time for men who reminded her of the worst mistake she'd ever made. No time at all. Except maybe, just maybe, she'd take a slightly different route home tomorrow. Past the Tate Modern, just to see, just to prove to herself that she was stronger than her memories, that she wouldn't make the same mistake twice.
If you're feeling the tension, you know what to do. Hit that like button, subscribe, and tap the notification bell so you don't miss a single beat. On this channel, we try not to do stereotypes.
We do us, real, refined, and beautifully complicated Black stories, told with love, honesty, and joy in who we are. But Camille and Joshua's journey is just beginning. Can a man who loves his freedom and a woman who lives for control find a middle ground? Find out in part 2. I'll see you then.